You hear the name Heracles, and what do you picture? Probably this guy with impossible strength, right? Battling monsters, bending the world to his will. But the real story, the one that actually defines him, it's not about strength at all. It's a story of incredible suffering, of guilt, and a desperate, desperate search for redemption.
So let's just ask this. What happens when the mightiest person alive completely breaks and does something so awful it can never, ever be taken back? That question, that's the real beginning of the 12 labors.
See, to really get the labors, you first have to understand the crime. This was never a quest for glory. It was a punishment, one that was born from an unimaginable tragedy.
It all starts with the goddess Hera. She was furious that her husband Zeus had an affair with Heracles' mother. So, in an act of pure vengeance, she inflicted a divine madness on Heracles. And in this horrible, blinding rage, not even knowing what he was doing, he murdered his own wife and children. When he finally came to his senses, he was completely and utterly shattered.
So desperate to purify himself, he travels to the famous oracle at Delphi. And the command he gets back is just epic. He has to serve his cowardly cousin, King Eurystheus, for 12 years and complete any task the king puts in front of him. Only then could he be cleansed of his crime, and as a bonus, he was promised he'd become immortal.
And that command, well, it sets the stage for these legendary labors. But you have to understand, these weren't just a random to-do list. They were a series of escalating trials, each one designed to break him, testing not just his body, but his mind and his soul.
Initially, the oracle told him he only had to perform 10 labors.
But things are never that simple, especially when the person giving the orders is your cousin who's determined to see you fail, or more likely, die trying.
So after Heracles somehow completes all the tasks, Eurystheus disqualifies 2 of them on these ridiculous technicalities. The fight with the Hydra? Nope, didn't count because his nephew helped burn the stumps. And cleaning the stables? Void, because he'd asked for payment. Just like that, 2 more impossible labors get tacked onto his sentence.
And this evolution is one of the key themes of the whole myth. The labors were designed to make Heracles grow. His first few tasks were all about raw physical power against these monstrous beasts. Slaying the Nemean lion with its unbreakable skin, destroying the Lernaean Hydra that grows back its heads, and capturing a giant boar. But as the trials went on, they started to demand a lot more than just muscle.
Let's just take his very first labor, the Nemean lion. Its hide was literally impenetrable. No weapon could pierce it. So Heracles had to toss his arrows aside, corner the beast, and rely on nothing but his own pure strength, strangling it with his bare hands. Then he wears its skin as armor, which is this great symbol of him overcoming his own pride to even start this journey.
Now compare that with the Augean Stables. This job was designed purely for humiliation, cleaning up decades of filth. But instead of shoveling, Heracles used his brain. He literally rerouted 2 entire rivers to wash the whole mess away. It was that same kind of cleverness he needed to scare off the Stymphalian birds with bronze clappers, or to trick the Titan Atlas into grabbing the golden apples for him while he held up the entire sky.
I mean, these trials pushed him to the absolute limits of the known world, and then way beyond. He had to have insane endurance, like when he spent a whole year chasing the sacred Lernaean hind. He had to have courage to tame man-eating horses and travel to the edge of the world for some cattle. And it all led up to the ultimate test, a journey into death itself. He had to go down into the underworld and capture its 3-headed guard dog Cerberus with nothing but his bare hands.
Because you see, these physical challenges, they were really just on the surface. The real battle Heracles was fighting was the one inside himself. This was a journey for his soul. And this is where the myth becomes totally timeless. We can actually look at these labors through a modern lens, where each monster is like an inner demon. The Nemean lion, that's his own ego and pride. The Hydra with all its heads, that's an uncontrollable problem that just gets worse when you attack it head-on. The filth in the stables is all the accumulated dirt on his soul that only humility and a clever solution could wash away. It was never just about killing monsters, it was about mastering himself.
This story of redemption was so incredibly important to Greek culture that they literally carved it into the heart of their most sacred site. At the great temple of Zeus at Olympia. Yeah, the place where the Olympic Games started, the 12 labors were the main attraction. Heracles was their founding hero, and his journey of struggle toward excellence, what they called arete, was the absolute perfect role model for the athletes competing there.
And what's amazing is that the artist told a story within the story. In the early carvings, Heracles is young, he doesn't have a beard, and he looks totally wiped out after his first big fight. By the middle labors, he's a mature, bearded hero, confidently dealing with the gods, and by the end, he's a tired but triumphant man who has been through it all. The art itself shows you the toll this journey took on him.
But of course, a legend this big doesn't just stay frozen in stone. As cultures changed over time, so did the meaning of their greatest hero.
The original Greek Heracles was a tragic figure. He was a symbol of endurance, a hero who brought order to a chaotic world. But when the Romans adopted him, their Hercules became something else, a symbol of military victory, a protective guardian. He was basically a model for their own emperors who claimed they could become gods.
And that evolution, it just keeps going, right up to today, which leads to this pretty stark contrast. On the one hand, you have the ancient hero locked in this grim, desperate battle for his own soul. And on the other, you have the pop culture icon that most of us probably know best.
And here is the fundamental, massive difference. The modern version completely guts the myth of its core. It removes the murder of his family, and with it, the desperate need for redemption. The tragic journey of atonement is replaced with a celebrity's quest for fame. The labors just become a fun montage on the way to stardom, not a terrible penance for an unforgivable sin.
In the end, the enduring power of Heracles isn't his strength, it's his struggle. He reminds us that true heroism isn't about being perfect or being famous. It's about having the guts to face our own inner monsters, our own impossible labors. Which really just leaves one final question for all of us. What labors are you facing?